Star Wars The Last Jedi movie review, and warning, all of the spoilers. Let's start with a quick flashback. 2012, Disney buys Star Wars from George Lucas for $4.2 billion and announces it will start making episodes 7, 8 and 9. Fans are cautious about this acquisition but rejoice regardless because it means more Star Wars. 2015, J.J. Abrams helms the writing and direction of the rebooted Star Wars with Episode 7, The Force Awakens. In December 2015, it premieres and receives mostly positive reviews initially, but then criticism for its sameness to 1977's A New Hope. I personally really enjoyed it. Yes, it is like a remix of A New Hope, but also it justifiably had to be to a certain extent. For Star Wars to be rebooted successfully off the back of the prequels required some familiarity, nostalgia and formula to restore humanity's faith in the franchise. It was smartly planned, and in this sense, the film itself is rewatchable and entertaining as any Star Wars film. Good pacing, relatively good direction, cinematography, engaging editing, rollicking action, capturing the heart and the spirit of Star Wars. And delivering a fresh range of new characters with interesting arcs and setups. Plenty of exciting storylines and questions. It's good sci-fi and good fun. It's a good Star Wars film. Soon after, Episode 8 director Rian Johnson is announced. You might not remember him from such films as Looper and Brick. I know I remember Looper. I made a point of remembering to remember never to watch it again. But somehow I convinced myself we were in good hands. Fool me once. Flash forward, it's December 2017 and the wait for 8 is over. Episode 8 starts with the famous opening crawl and the words, "The First Order reigns." Well, that's interesting because at the end of Episode 7, which is immediately before Episode 8 starts, Starkiller Base was destroyed. The First Order's biggest, most ominous weapon was just destroyed. And after suffering a massive defeat like this, you might think the opening crawl should have read something like, "The First Order are scrambling to pick up the pieces the Resistance have scattered." But alas, so begins Rian Johnson's disregard for the previous film and for all story continuity. This is his film, and he instead plunges us into his choice selection of mind-numbingly bold, daring, fresh, imaginative writing choices. Not only does the opening crawl not make sense as a continuation of the Episode 7 story, but the word reign implies that the First Order and its leaders are somewhat competent, ruthless, calculated, and experienced military officers. So when we get First Order characters drawn and portrayed as bumbling fools,
supremely... Don't get distracted, I'll go... Right away, sir.
It largely diminishes the punch that was presumably intended. The action kicks off with the First Order destroying the Resistance base and being hot on the heels of the remaining Resistance ships. Our first dialogue exchange between Poe and Hux resembles an SNL skit that wouldn't have made it past a first draft. The scene yanks us out of the film with its jarring humour and breaks this sense of urgency and looming terror with a joke. Bathos. And you see, bathos is so common and yet problematic for films these days. Because of it, we get the sense that Rian Johnson is too afraid to commit to the drama and instead will throw in cheap, fake-out jokes to take away from the gravitas of the situation. By doing this, he negates his commitment to developing the drama, to taking the drama to somewhere genuinely bold. Furthermore, it's a little insulting to the audience. It entirely detracts from the narrative and sets the tone for the rest of the film. It shows no concern for the characters and their plight and for previously established dramatic tones, which means that when it comes time for the real drama, It's kind of a boy who cried wolf situation. We're not engaged enough to really care. From this point onwards, the tone deaf of the film is muddled. The holiday special is shaping up to be more rewatchable than this.
Of course, if your family has a hearty appetite, I would suggest then that old popular holiday favorite, the Bantha Rump.
The opening action sequence continues, which features our first of many convenient plot holes, serving to force us further into this massive turd of a film rather than to serve the story itself. The plot holes are so gaping, the only thing that prevents us from actually seeing them with 20/20 vision is the massive turds of action and spectacle that are filling our eyeballs to the brim. But despite all of this confusion, we as an audience intuitively feel at odds because we know what a good story should look and feel like. And furthermore, we know what a good Star Wars film should look like. Hell, at this point, I was wishing Jar Jar would walk into a scene.
Count me out of this one. Better dead here than dead in the core. Ye gods! What the Misa say?
Plot hole number 1. General Hux, leader of the reigning First Order, is a bumbling, incompetent fool. And instead of blowing Poe out of the galaxy at the first chance he has, which is many, decides to engage in Poe's insults, and this results in the destruction of the First Order's largest battleship, the Dreadnought, also known as the Naught Dread. Because if it was really that full of dread, it would have done something other than just get blown up in the first 20 minutes. For the destruction of this ship, General Hux doesn't get a demotion, pay cut, or a force choke. He just gets his head slammed into the floor, which is intended to be comical but also ouch, a blood nose, insulted by Snoke, and told to carry on. Captain Needa and a long list of other Imperial officers from the original trilogy certainly never got the same mercy for their misjudgment. Plot hole number 2. During this battle, Poe switches off his comms mid-battle with Leia, and this apparently renders Leia's communication with the rest of the fleet ineffective. Leia's comms still work, and the entire fleet, excluding Poe, didn't turn their comms off. So why didn't she just tell them to retreat? But this only happens so we can introduce Captain Purple Rinse, which I'll get to soon enough. Plot hole number 3. Both the First Order and the Resistance are useless at tactical military maneuvers, sending bombing ships into attack that need to be directly above the ship to drop their payload, but are so closely engaged with fighters that if they got hit, would surely explode so hard they would blow each other up. And they do. Plot hole number 4. BB-8 is useless at repairing Poe's guns when they get blown up by utilising any of his tools effectively. But sticking his head into wires magically works because lols, and yet whilst he can't repair a couple of wires and uses random luck to get out of the situation, he can drive an ATST. What even is your point, BB-8? Oh yeah, merchant lols. After this battle, Poe returns to the Resistance ship and Leia slaps Poe in the face, 'cause drama, for disobeying a direct order, and as a result, some Resistance fighters dying. But in the grand scheme of things, surely what Poe did would be considered a huge win for the Resistance? Also considering he has just blown up Starkiller Base about 60 minutes ago.
You're demoted.
So this guy's doing pretty good. Let him keep going. Why slap him in the face and demote him? He prevented the further destruction of entire systems of planets. A handful of dead Resistance fighters for the greater good is hardly worth a face slapping and a demotion, especially considering all the stupid military tactics we have just witnessed. He is quite literally the galaxy's best pilot and the Resistance's best asset. But this only happens so Disney can whip out their SJW agenda and Captain Purple Rinse. Then we head to Arc 2, which I'm assuming was named after a sneeze. The planet where Luke, who hates the Jedi, is dressed as a Jedi, has come there to die, but left a map for people to find him. If I had an IQ as low as the star rating I'm going to give this film, this would all make sense. But I'm not a potato. We finally get to see what happens after the epic cliffhanger conclusion of episode 7. What a momentous scene to return to. What will happen? What will Luke's first words be? Well, Luke just tosses the lightsaber over his shoulder, completely unceremoniously, and proceeds to storm off in a huff like a spoiled child. And this perfectly represents what Rian Johnson thinks of anyone else's ideas about this story and how it should be told. Just toss it over your shoulder and storm off. Small man syndrome at its absolute finest. Rey attempts to communicate with Luke, but he just stays in his big huff and says, "Go away." Rian justified this portrayal of Luke Skywalker by saying stuff like, "Heroes change, people get old and cranky." Sure, they do, but Luke Skywalker doesn't need to become a dismissive, crotchety old git. He can still be a bit broken, but still have a spirit about him that is true to Luke Skywalker's character. He doesn't need to be a coward. Hashtag not my Luke Skywalker, hashtag not now, not ever, hashtag see ya. Meanwhile, we go back to another space battle, and this time the stakes have been raised as the Resistance have realised that the First Order have technology that will allow them to track them through hyperspace. And the Resistance can't just hyperspace away this time because they are running out of fuel and there's no petrol station nearby and no one brought a jerry can. So Kylo Ren blows up some stuff and eventually Leia Poppins gets blown out into space. But it's okay because even though we have never ever, not once ever seen her use the Force, she has the most powerful Force abilities and can save herself from the cold vacuum of space. But she still needs to have a lie down after that ordeal in a little ICU, and this happens only so we can finally be introduced to Vice Admiral Purple Rinse. And can I just say, she's not dressed appropriately for military duty at the level she is commanding. Sorry about it. Purple Rince's only purpose in the film is to drive home Disney's social justice warrior agenda, and that is men are bad, make bad decisions, should be slapped for making bad decisions, should get their heads out of their cockpit, quit being flyboys, or demote them and don't tell them your plan for anything. Let them figure it out for themselves, and if this means a mutiny, then so be it. They are just demonstrating their lack of good judgment in crisis situations. Silly men. Instead of strong, admirable female qualities, we get what reads like all the things you wouldn't want to find on a CV. A weak leader, poor communicator, unnecessary risk taker, unable to effectively manage subordinates in a crisis situation causing division and distrust, lacks foresight, and is unequipped to utilise the skills and abilities of her best crew. By not communicating the plan, it appears she doesn't have a plan, and so Poe, Finn and Rose decide to formulate their own plan. Yes, I get it. There's a lesson in this mess for everyone. Ryan is trying to teach us a lesson. The lesson of failure. Failure to communicate. But none of this actually adds up for me. It's a clumsy attempt at a plot device and further fuels the issue of characters acting incongruently in their environment and circumstances. One of the main themes in the original trilogy is that of teamwork and camaraderie, working together to achieve the same goal. Let's not also forget Star Wars has one of the most iconic and inspiring heroines of all time in Princess, now General Leia, and Padme in episodes 1 and 2, not in episode 3 because she was just combing her hair. So we don't need Purple Rince. She's a straight up diversion, waste of what could have been excellent dialogue for Leia, and character development also. And it should have gone to Leia, rather than having her lie in bed comatose. So back we go to Rey and Luke, and Rey is still begging for Luke to talk to him and yada yada yada. The Resistance needs you, blah blah blah. But Luke is more interested in showing off his survival skills on the island he's come to die on, by slurping blue milk fresh from the four-breasted alien who is enjoying being milked far too much. Actually, they're both enjoying it too much. It's beyond weird. It's not even jumping the shark. It's a whole new level of whack. Rey and Kylo get telepathically force connected and start communicating with each other. At first there's bitterness, but eventually Kylo starts telling Rey to question Luke's past. Now, Skype Force. This is the best example of a convenient plot device if I ever saw one. I mean, the Force is a plot device in and of itself, but having characters who are on opposite sides of the galaxy being able to communicate is just, it's downright lazy. Luke eventually tells Rey what Kylo did and why Luke thinks it's time for the Jedi to end. He then reluctantly begins training her and soon witnesses Rey's power and says, "I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then, it does now." We can assume he's talking about Kylo here, his nephew, who he tried to kill in his sleep, because he saw some dark side thoughts. Luke tried to kill Kylo when he saw a darkness in his mind, yet witnessing Rey's raw strength and inability to resist the dark side doesn't concern him. It does? Doesn't? It does. Furthermore, now we know what happened between Kylo and Luke. Knowing that Kylo is on the loose and fulfilling what Luke saw in his mind, why doesn't Luke do something now? Why does he just leave his sister's son to now run rampant around the galaxy? It's like me telling you I'm going to do a Chanel No. 2 on the red carpet the night of the premiere of The Last Jedi. And you say, "I'll stop you before it gets that far." And when it gets that far, you don't stop me. And then I look up and say, "Spare a square," as if I'm an orphan and my name is Oliver. And you hand me a fresh 3-ply loo roll. It's the same thing. You said you were going to stop me. You had a chance, but instead you were complicit in your lack of action taking. It's like the script was actually written with a turd crayon. I cared so little about Rey in this film. I loved Rey in The Force Awakens. Loved her. Determined, hopeful, naive, strong, intelligent, street smart, powerful, a great fighter, witty. In The Last Jedi, she has no arc. She has neither moved forward or back. She has zero struggle. She only found out her parents were nobodies, and this was possibly the biggest single anticlimax ever. I didn't need her to be a Skywalker, a Kenobi, a Palpatine, or an Ewok. But an everybody is special and gets a prize nonsense answer is still nonsense. Oh, she gets to lift some rocks at the end. Lots and lots and lots of rocks. I would care if in this film she got her ass handed to her. I would care if she didn't know how to speak droid, fly the Millennium Falcon, fix the Millennium Falcon, know Jedi mind tricks, basically do anything she wants. I would care if she had to learn and struggle and learn to be capable. Because I could relate to not having everything handed to me on a silver platter. Luke struggled. Why shouldn't Rey? Luke struggled and he was a Skywalker. How can Rey not struggle and her parents were just bin rats who sold her so they could get their drank on? Lazy writing, that's what. So whilst all of this bollocks is happening and the galaxy's most edge of your seat, slow motion car chase in the history of historic boringness is taking place, i.e. we're running out of fuel. Since when was running out of fuel a good story or backdrop for drama? Actually, there was that Seinfeld episode with Kramer driving the car as far as he could with the needle below empty. That was funny. And yet the First Order states, "Their ships are faster than ours, so are staying out of range of our main cannons." And yet because they are faster, the Resistance managed to make no greater distance between them and the First Order and stay the exact same distance the entire time. All while that boorish exposition is taking place, Finn and Rose have this lame adventure on Coruscant. I mean, Mos Eisley Cantina. No, the casino planet. Because nothing says money and a social commentary on the 1% like a casino planet. Where did Rian Johnson go to learn metaphors? The heavy-handed school of metaphors that aren't actually metaphors, and it's not even a school, it's the university of actual things and just using the actual thing you are trying to represent? There's no nuance. So they go to find a code breaker, and there's only like 1 or 2 in the galaxy that would know this one particular code. And he's wearing a thing on his jacket, so they'll know it's him. And they know this because Maz Kanata, who's not even there, gives them this info. And they get arrested for a parking violation. And get thrown into jail and are out in 2 seconds because the guy who is in their cell is a lock picker having a nap, and rather than picking the lock and letting himself out when he first got in there, he's napping and waiting for our heroes to come along so he can let everybody out. But before they get arrested, because of this great sense of urgency, we have time for a little pit stop to watch a space horse race, and Rose to talk about how she doesn't like space horse racing and child slavery. Now, I'm all for animal rights, including space horses, and I'm not a fan of child slavery either. But could you leave it out of Star Wars? And also, you're going to free the space horses and not the kids? Isn't it funny and cute how all the social and political issues our current times are facing are the same as those being dealt with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away? You know, the same issues that are the reason you go to watch a sci-fi fantasy movie to forget about and not be reminded about. Let's talk about Snoke and that throne room scene. The only good scene in the film. First of all, what sort of narcissist sets up a room that is essentially a circus tent inside a ship and gets around in a gold bathrobe? The same narcissist who goes to all of this trouble to put on an elaborate show and mightily declare, "I cannot be betrayed," and has the ability to mentally force connect Rey and Kylo through Skype and demonstrates being a very powerful Force user, being able to lift and hurl Rey around the room with nothing but a thought, only to be bisected with a lightsaber because he lacks a teeny tiny bit of peripheral vision. The end. No more to say, because that is quite literally all we are told about Snoke. I get the lesson. I'm not a moron. Snoke was blinded by his own arrogance. But really? Thanks, Rian, for the crappy writing disguised as a lesson. Which brings me to my next point. Rian is a selfish writer. In many of his interviews, he's stated things like, "I had to think what is the most opposite thing that this character would do, want, need. Let's do that." That's not clever writing. That's uncreative. What a character should do or should experience should serve their character and the larger story being told. It shouldn't just be opposite day. Anyone can play opposite day. Go, stop, life, death. See, it's easy. Opposite day is easy. Yes, no, up, down. Screw you, Rian. Oh, there's no opposite for that. So then Admiral Purple Rinse finally reveals her plan to her fractured team, while Finn and Rose get double-crossed by the codebreaker. And this all climaxes with Purple Rinse sacrificing herself by hyperspacing into Snoke's ship, so the Resistance can sneak down onto a nearby moon. Here we get excellent dialogue such as salt. And this is so that we know that salt is not ice, because Rian wants us to know that it's not anything like Hoth. His film is unique. And then a series of the dumbest things ever to happen, including Rose saving Finn from what could have been the ultimate sacrifice and would have actually given Finn an excellent character arc from being a coward to not being a coward, but it's yet another fake out so Rose can say, we will win by saving the things we love, which is exactly what Finn was trying to do. Then Luke Skywalker, the grumbling, cowardly, blue milk drinking, whatever he is now, shows up, gives Leia a kiss, and tricks Kylo into fighting him as an astral projection, and dies. Meanwhile, Rey helps the remaining Resistance members escape and fly off in the Millennium Falcon. And the final shot is Broom Boy sweeping, using the Force to summon the broom. Episode 9, Broom Boy gets sweepin'. So the main theme of the film, which is failure, is quite fitting because it is a failure. For the record, this film made $700 million less than The Force Awakens. That pretty much accounts for all the fans who are done with the franchise, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the most spectacular fail. Now, you might be watching or reading this and thinking that if you look hard enough, you can find faults like this in every film. Well, I'm not really looking hard, its faults are evident. You might also think it's just my opinion, and opinions don't make bad movies. Well, this isn't really a case of it being about opinion, when objectively this film is measurably and quantifiably bad. Whether Ryan wants to admit it or not, choosing divisive storytelling for the sake of it is not good storytelling. The countless plot holes. As I've stated previously, anyone can pick the opposite thing and force that. And this is exactly how the characters and story developments feel. Forced so hard it's caused hemorrhoids. It's overlong by 30 minutes, abrasively edited, terribly paced, and uncreatively shot. The score is a remix, reprise of every other score in the series, nothing fresh and new. George Lucas should be commended for his vision for The Phantom Menace as an example, and his collaboration with John Williams to create one of the most memorable and epic scores in the series. In short, this film is a spectacular letdown. It's incredibly unsatisfying for fans to watch, and especially unsatisfying to watch the last time Luke and Leia could be on screen together. And whilst Ryan wanted to make a fresh and new, honest and shocking film, he has just copied Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Who sits down to write a movie and says, what is the complete opposite to what makes sense or is expected, and won't take into consideration anything that has been laid out before or has been established previously, and then what is the biggest thing I can think of in terms of spectacle that will distract from the pointlessness of these writing choices? Someone who is only thinking about themselves and their Star Wars movie. Not a single lightsaber comes into contact with another lightsaber. Why would you consciously do this? And if I hear the word hope one more time, I'm gonna get to me some shin kicking. Give me B. Arthur's Mos Eisley musical number any old day.
Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.
Star rating? If we were to take stars from the night sky to give this film its rating, our universe would be plunged into a never-ending darkness. So instead, I minus it a star for every previous Star Wars film, and that is -8 stars. Oh, don't get me wrong, I still like Star Wars, but just not this film.